In the summer of 1978, the shocking, brutal murder of Hogan's Heroes star Bob Crane captured America's attention. The prime suspect was Crane's best friend, John Carpenter. It took 16 years, but in 1994, the question was finally put to a jury. Did John Carpenter kill Bob Crane?
All rise.
I'm 100% sure that John Carpenter killed Bob Crane.
I knew Bob Crane and John Carpenter since I was 6 years old. My father was Richard Dawson, who played Peter Newkirk on Hogan's Heroes. Twice, I asked John Carpenter point blank if he killed Bob Crane. And both times, he looked me dead in the eye and he said, I did not kill Bob Crane, he was my best friend.
Crane and Carpenter had been friends since the late 60s. At the time, Carpenter sold high-end video equipment for Sony, while Crane was one of TV's most popular stars.
The character of Hogan was tailor-made for my dad. He was, you know, Robert E. Hogan, basically. That was him.
Crane and Carpenter's friendship was built on shared interests: women, photography, and sex.
They were out for one thing, and that was how many women can we bed between the two of them. And then it progressed into how many women can we bed that we can take photographs or videotape. And that's when it really kind of led into some problems.
Crane's X-rated hobby alienated him from mainstream Hollywood, and by the mid-70s, he was touring the country doing dinner theater.
The man just didn't understand why people would object to his pornography hobby. He just never really understood that that was a career breaker.
In the summer of 1978, the romantic comedy Beginner's Luck took Bob Crane to Scottsdale, but it was there in the Arizona desert that Bob Crane's luck ran out. In the early morning hours of June 29th, the actor was beaten to death in his sleep. He was 49.
I was 7 when my father passed away. I was playing outside, and I remember looking through the window and seeing my mother on the phone, and she was crying. I knew something had happened.
There are absolutely no clues in the murder of actor Bob Crane.
When Bob Crane's body was discovered, he was beaten so savagely that Victoria Berry, who had found his body, a co-star in the play he was in, did not know it was him. She gets a little closer and she realizes that's Bob Crane.
He was curled up in bed with the covers pulled up. Police said his skull had been crushed and that a cable used for hooking up video equipment was found wrapped around his neck.
He had been hit at least once on the head with a blunt object, and there was a lot of blood. It was a pretty messy scene. We checked for signs of forcible entry, found none. The front door had been open, according to our witness, Miss Berry.
Just a few hours into the investigation, a phone call to the crime scene brought a suspect into focus.
Lieutenant Dean received a phone call from a party who identified himself as John Carpenter and said he was a good friend of Bob Crane's and had left that morning and flown back to Los Angeles.
They chat a moment, and he hangs up, and Dean says, you know, it's odd. He didn't even ask once why the police were at Bob Crane's apartment.
The next day, police began investigating John Carpenter.
We learned that he had stayed at a motel about 2 blocks down the street, the Sunburst Hotel. We found out that he had rented a car there.
Scottsdale police officer Darwin Berry tracked down the car a few hours later.
We opened the door and at that time found what appeared to be blood evidence on the door of the car. I said, this is it. We've got him now.
There wasn't a lot of blood in there, but what was there did match my dad's blood type. It's a really, really rare blood.
But police got no closer matching the blood to Bob Crane.
At the time, they had no DNA testing, and it was unable to go any further.
Carpenter was brought back to Scottsdale to answer some questions.
We're trying to talk to you about the murder of Bob Crane.
This I understand.
In Scottsdale.
When you sit across from me and accuse me of killing my best friend, one of my best friends.
Well, I'm still thinking that you did.
We felt we had a really good circumstantial case.
But the district attorney wanted more than circumstantial evidence.
He said the only way that I'm going to issue a complaint on this case is if you bring me the murder weapon with the suspect's fingerprints on it, or bring me a confession from the suspect.
For years, the murder of Bob Crane remained an open investigation with little hope of closure. But in 1992, a new district attorney decided that this mystery had remained unsolved long enough. And on June 1st of that year, John Carpenter was arrested.
I hope all the people that know me send the prayers that they said they were going to send to help me. Because, man, I need it. I know I didn't do anything wrong. I have to prove to 12 people that I didn't do anything wrong.
Be seated, please.
I've never seen one scintilla of physical evidence that points to John Carpenter. Yes, he had opportunity. He didn't have motive.
But police believe he did have a motive.
Next to Bob Crane's bed, when he was murdered, was an address book. Every page you turn, all the future meetings with John Carpenter are X'd out.
We learned from Bob Crane Jr. that his dad was getting tired of John kind of hanging on to him and was looking to end the relationship.
I think the anger that built up in him, the violence, the choice of a bludgeon says to me a severed friendship.
But Carpenter denied any rift in his friendship with Crane.
If I was becoming such a pain in the ass, and if the man didn't want me to come, why make a reservation for me?
You can see San Antonio scratched out. Okay? You know what that means? That means Bob Crane doesn't like San Antonio.
I wasn't convinced at all that the jury would find Mr. Carpenter guilty. Too much time had elapsed.
I think the police should have looked into everybody a lot harder than they did. Unfortunately, they came across Carpenter, they came across what was purported to be blood in his rent-a-car, and then they just tunnel visioned in on him.
We didn't tunnel vision on John Carpenter. Certainly everything was looked at, but everything turned right back around to him.
The police probably did overlook evidence that pointed to other suspects, but again, there was so much overwhelming evidence leading to John. I can kind of understand where they would do that.
So who were the other suspects?
Certainly could cast a suspicion on Patty Crane.
In every murder case, the spouse is, a suspect. It was actually impossible for my mother to be anywhere near Scottsdale at the time of the murder.
We have Victoria Berry, the woman that found the body. Victoria had a key to Bob's apartment. Her husband suspected that Bob was having an affair with Victoria Berry, which indeed he was.
He had a lot of women that he was sleeping with who might have had boyfriends or husbands that were not too happy with Bob Crane.
But only one suspect was ever brought to trial. And after 16 long years, the fate of that suspect was in the hands of a jury.
We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the above entitled action upon our oaths, do find the defendant not guilty of murder in the first degree.
Without a doubt in my mind, had we had DNA evidence available to test the blood, that John Carpenter would have been found guilty.
I never really believed in my heart that he was capable of doing it.
I didn't know what the outcome of the trial would be, and I really didn't care. It doesn't really change anything. My father's still gone.
It's over. It's over.
The police have absolutely closed the case, and as far as I'm concerned, it's a closed case. I would just love for my dad to be remembered as the funny guy on TV, the guy he was. He wanted to be remembered as Hogan. He wanted to be remembered as a drummer or as a great radio DJ, as an innovator in radio, not as the victim of a murder case. That's not many people's goal.